Did you see, Eric, the very well done biography series that they had like on A&E?
I've been a part of some of them. I've seen a couple of them, but not all of them.
Yeah, you have been a part of some of them. They're very, very good. Is there any that you've seen that stuck out to you?
All of mine.
Yeah.
All of the ones that I'm on.
Do you go back and watch some of your stuff, Eric? Every now and then, go and you get in a YouTube rabbit hole. You just click,
No,
because it's funny. I got in a rabbit hole one day. Like people just forget, because they see you today. Like this generation, bro. You were a really good on-screen character.
In WCW and WWE both.
In WCW especially, like
and
people
Impact.
Forget because I've lost perspective because like I was there in the company working when you're out there performing on TV. 20 years later, when I go back and look at that stuff, I was like, as a fan, very compelling stuff. Because here's the owner of the company, like the boss out on TV and stuff, with your hat on backwards, kind of like a rebel stuff. It was, bro, it's just really, really, you were. I'm surprised that you didn't really get into acting or anything after this, because like there's a certain skill level that like a lot of guys back then had that you see, like bro, you had incredible talent, and I think it's kind of like people forget about all that because you were the boss of WCW.
Well, I appreciate that. And I do, I occasionally, when I'm doing the podcast, I'll find out Conrad will send me a text on a Thursday night and say, okay, we're going to be reviewing, WCW Nitro from July of 1996 or whatever episode. And I'll have to go back and watch it because I don't remember that shit.
Right.
And a lot of times when I watch it, it's actually the first time I've ever seen it because while I was producing the show,
right,
as you guys know, I didn't sit and grill.
Yeah, we were there. Like you see your stuff when you're there. Like,
I didn't sit there and watch the show on a monitor. I was bouncing around backstage. I was in the ring doing stuff. I was backstage doing stuff. I never really watched the whole show unless I watched it on a replay at the bar occasionally.
Right.
But when I go back and watch those shows now, it's 20 some odd years later. A lot of times I don't even remember doing it. So it's like watching it for the first time and it's fun.
Let me ask you a question, because I saw a picture of you early on the other day when you were like in that I forgot what it's called. What's that big mall in Minneapolis?
Mall of America.
Yeah, and you were there with fucking Mongo and like the little dog. How did you even meet Mongo? Because you had him, he was your boy, right?
I found out when I was in Nashville with Jeff Jarrett and we did a panel because I didn't know. Somebody asked me that same question when we did our panel for Steve, our benefit. And I said, man, I don't even know how. I don't know if he came to me or if I found him. And Jeff Jarrett, who was right next to me, said, I know the answer. I said, well, how the hell do you know? He says, because I asked Mongo a couple months ago and Mongo told him that it was Harvey Schiller who had the connection to Steve McMichael. And Harvey Schiller suggested that I meet with Steve. And that's how that started. So it was really Harvey Schiller that made the introduction.
What a great guy. I love that guy. It's unfortunate he's suffering through some physical stuff, but I love Mongo to death.
He is the toughest human being I have ever met. No one's that I know is even close.
Yeah.
This is a guy that if you see him, if you've seen pictures of him or video of him, come on. It is what it is. And every picture you see of him, he's smiling. He's still Steve Mongo McMichael. He's still guy, making. Man. I talked to him about.
I never saw that guy in a bad mood.
I talked to him a few months ago. I was at an event with Ric Flair, and we were all sitting backstage. And Rick says, "Let's say hi to Mongo." And he gets Mongo on the phone, and Mongo's telling some of the dumbest jokes I've ever heard, and he's laughing at his own shit. And I'm thinking, man, if you're facing death like that. If you're facing that and you still have a sense of humor, you're the toughest motherfucker I've ever met.
He's a great guy, dude. Yeah. Awesome guy. Let me ask you this, Eric. I always wanted to ask you this, and you come on the podcast and then you leave, and then I'm like, fuck, I forgot to ask him, so I will now. Tell me 3 things in WCW that you would have done different.
I would have not done Thunder.
Right.
That's first and foremost. I would have fought that somehow and not done Thunder.
Right.
I would have, as a result of not doing Thunder, I would not have expanded the NWO to the extent that I did. I would have kept it a little bit more exclusive. Not that I wouldn't have expanded it, but I wouldn't have had everybody and their second cousin in there.
Right.
Those are 2 things. And I think the third thing would be, and honestly, this is going to be a boring answer, but I would have spent a little bit more time polishing up my corporate presence because I was Ted Turner's favorite redheaded stepchild.
Well, you were like one of the boys, dude. I mean, come on.
I was still a redheaded stepchild corporately, and I would have spent a little bit more time overcoming that.
What are 3 things that you wanted to do, but for some reason you were never able to do that? You can tell us now. Like one time I heard you want to do something on New Year's Eve.
I was going to say that's the biggest thing, brother. You know, I get my balls busted all the time because I stroked the check to Kiss.
Right.
The entire band for $250,000, not 500 like the narrative says, but $250,000 to play a live set on Nitro, right? Which, you know, people thought was crazy. Try to do that today, by the way. But the reason I did that and the reason that we created those Kiss characters is because we had been planning on doing a pay-per-view on December 31st, 1999 called New Year's Evil. And we were going to be doing it from the Sun Bowl in Phoenix where they played, or was it where they played? I think it was in Tempe is the name.
Yeah, the Sun Bowl, the stadium, yeah. I
had been working with the commission so that we could have a wrestling event in that arena, right? And on one end was going to be a live Kiss concert. On the other end was going to be a ring. And that pay-per-view was going to open up with Kiss and then cut to a match. Go back to Kiss for a song, come back to a match. And it would have been laid out and formatted in such a way that it would have ended at 12 o'clock midnight Eastern time. So we could have played up the end of the world, because if you remember in everybody was afraid
the doomsday clock kind of
the computers are going to stop working.
Right, yeah.
So
it was like that Y2K, or what was it called?
Huh?
Y2K or something like that.
Yeah, Y2K. And then of course our buddy Chris Jericho decided to steal that shit, which is great.
Let me ask you this. Here's another question. And you ran into a grip of them, but who would you say were the 2 or 3 biggest divas that you had to work with, even if they're your friends now?
God, I don't.
Come on.
I mean,
I can see, but bro, I'll throw a name out there. I can see Paige. Because I was good friends. He was kind of like.
Here's the deal, Disco, and this is why this one's a hard.
I don't mean diva. I just mean kind of because he's always involved. Wants to be involved in everything. You know, like because I was.
That's not a diva, man. That's a guy that just wants a.
Yeah,
that's not the same thing.
It's not the correct word, right?
Look, I mean, Kevin Nash was a pain in the ass, like 60% of the time, and the other 40% of the time, he was like my brother.
Right.
You know, maybe 50-50. But there were times when it was really difficult. There were times, but see, I never considered Kevin to be a diva. You know, that's all about ego and make me feel better and, stroke my ego and give me shit, treat me special. That was never Kevin. Kevin would let me know when he wasn't happy or when things were not going right or the way he felt they should go. But that's not being a diva. I don't think I had anybody that was diva that was just wanted to be doted upon. Everybody was pretty much there to do the work.
Yeah.
But there was, I mean, look, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan gave me nightmares every once in a while. There were times when I wished that Diamond Dallas Page lived about 7 or 8 miles away instead of down the street.
Bro, I spent tons of time with Page. I was like,
I used to tell Rory on a Saturday, I get up in the morning and go, if that fucking guy comes over to my house and start talking wrestling before 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to shoot him. I'm just going to shoot him.
It's like, bro, here's what you got to do. How about you hear that, right? Bro, here's what you got to do.
Let's go for a ride, bro.
I want to talk about this real quick. Is it kind of fascinating, like since AEW's come on TV, is that how they've changed the narrative and everything on television ratings? Like all of a sudden now the demo is like the most important thing, and like they report the demo's like this, and I'm like, what's like like you talked about this like with market share and everything, bro. It's like you're kind of like ignoring the product that professional wrestling has been for years. It's like it's on 52 weeks a year, right? And we're trying to draw as many fans as possible to drive your live show revenue, to drive your pay-per-view audience, to drive everything. And it's like right now they're just focused on the demo. And it's like, dude, it's like really, it's like half the median age of the fan these days, I think, is 52 years old. So like literally half of your wrestling audience is over 50 years old these days. The televised viewers, and it's like
you know why that's weird to me, Eric? Because there's no characters that are 50 years old on the show. That's kind of weird to me. But go ahead.
But we're all over 50. We're talking about it right now.
But we have to watch the show because we get paid to watch it. I think
to answer your question, Disco, I think what's happened. I mean, a couple of things happened. Legitimately, there was a time, even back when I was running WCW, when Nielsen reported ratings and shares.
Right.
You may not remember that because I don't know if you guys were into ratings that much at that time, but ratings and shares was the kind of qualifier, if you will. And then that changed probably around 2012 or so, 13, where even Nielsen and television studios quit reporting ratings and in terms of rating and share and started talking about households, or viewers, total viewers.
Right.
And then they would break the total viewers down. Look, the fact is the 18 to 49-year-old demo is the most important demo in the television advertising business. Of all the different demos, there's teens, there's preteens. All of it is important, by the way, and 49 and up, not as important as 18 to 49 from an advertising point of view. Right? Because advertisers believe that once you're in your 50s, your decisions about what you like and what you don't like and what you buy and what you won't buy, you've already made up your mind, so they can't really influence you much. But your 18 to 49-year-olds, they're very influential and they have discretionary income. So that's where a lot of advertising is pushed. So it's not wrong to talk about demos. What I find frustrating is when that's all they talk about, because demos appear on a statistical basis or on a data point basis appear to be a little closer aligned between AEW and WWE. So the people that are reporting, like Brandon Thurston, for example, he turns himself into a data donut every week when he tries to spin the data and spin the information so that it makes AEW look as favorable as possible. Here's how I look at it, and I look at things very simply. Right now, let's look at Monday night. Monday Night WWE had 1.7 million viewers, and that was against Monday Night Football and the Emmys. Against
the Emmys was on too. I didn't know
Monday Night Football,
right? Which was a good game,
and it was a good game. But it's the first night of Monday Night Football, and they're against the Emmys, and they still did 40% more viewers than AEW did coming off of a pay-per-view.
Right.
Off of a controversial thing too.
That's the real comparison to me. That doesn't mean that the 18 to 49 isn't important. It certainly is. And it drives network buying decisions. It affects their programming decisions. And the fact is that AEW has a solid 18 to 49 demo compared to the rest of the TBS network. But you can't compare AEW to WWE in any meaningful way and have any credibility at all.
Right.
You just can't.
I want to bring this up because it's funny too. We talk about like how it's so narrative driven, where AEW is peeling data points out to try to make themselves look good. I used to do this when I was on the writing team. We used to get nobody it was fascinating to me how when we would all get we got the minute by minute ratings, but none of the dirt sheets they would always do quarters, the quarters, and I was getting the minute by minutes. This was the most telling statistic, okay, because I used to love numbers and analyzing the minute by minutes and matching them against this and Monday Night Football. This was the most tried and true formula, right? When the Monday Night Football game is good and it's compelling, the wrestling audience is going to suffer because that demographic, the 84 is going to be tuned into Monday Night Football. It's a good game. When the Monday Night Football game is a blowout, the wrestling audience does not suffer that much because when the game is a blowout and they're turning off they're turning that game off, they're gravitating towards the other top genre of the 18 to 49 market on TV at that time. And nobody's caught up with this. Like everybody else, I keep trying to repeat this thing. Measure this on Monday night. If the game's good, WWE will probably do a shitty rating. If it's not good, they might not suffer that much, right? But the thing that I think is fascinating is that, when you talk about just pulling that data point out, the 18 to 49, just a demo, bro, it makes you ignore. This is crazy to me. Professional wrestling was always the number one thing on cable, viewer wise and stuff. We were just number one, and everything, right? Now the news, obviously, when Trump came along, and all of a sudden the news became big and everything, and so it surpassed wrestling and total viewership. You can't do anything about that, right? But I'm finding it fascinating on Wednesday night. Bro, there's a show, nobody talks about this. Maybe they do the demo because you don't have to bring this up. In total viewership from 9 to 10, there's a show called Dr. Pill Popper on the A&E network or History Channel or something.
It's a fucking disgusting show. I can't stand it.
It does
1.9
million viewers.
It's a freak show. That's why people like freak shows.
Right. And the funniest thing is like Dave will report, well, tennis was on this week, and that's why the number was good. Hockey was on, that's why the number was good. I'm like, dude, Dr. Pill Poppers is what your focus should be on. You need to like target yourself toward that audience. You're not even bringing it up. That's your competition.
And again, I think with Meltzer especially, and Brandon Thurston, and these, there's a what's the word for that? They're surrogates, right? They're media surrogates. Perfect word. And look, nothing wrong with that. Not being critical of it, but you just have to recognize it for what it is.
Right.
You know, there's so much emphasis on trying to position AEW as a sport, because I think the collective thinking is that, well, if you know, look at sports rights fees and how much sports rights fees are going up. Therefore, if sports rights fees are going up and AEW is live sports, then AEW's fees should go up. Wrestling is not sports, folks. Here's another thing I noticed in last week's show, and I didn't notice it until I rewatched the show again. I actually watched the show twice because I was making notes.
Right.
I noticed last night, now maybe it's happened before and I never noticed it because I didn't watch the show as closely as I did, but all of a sudden now Tony is referring to AEW as a combat sport. He said something to the effect of, this title is the most impressive title in all of combat sports.
Right.
You are not a combat sport. You're professional wrestling. You're almost doing what Vince McMahon did when he didn't want to call himself professional wrestling and called himself sports entertainment. Now Tony Khan doesn't want to call himself professional wrestling. He's calling himself combat sports. Muckerfather, put anybody in your roster in an octagon with somebody that actually trains in combat sports, and let's shoot that and see how that goes.
Right.
It's not a combat sport. It's professional wrestling. It's episodic drama, character-driven television. Don't try to pretend it's a sport. Don't compare it to sports. Don't hold yourself up against sports because you lose credibility in the process.
Have you noticed that WWE's been doing? You know, we picked up on this many months ago, but they've been doing some pretty decent episodic storytelling on.
They've gone back to it.
They've gone back to it. And it's like, you know, they always have. There's a thread throughout, like especially the bloodline thread that's been going on for years, and the way they stagger it throughout the show and stuff, like it's the main thread, but they've got a couple other, you know, there's threads throughout the show. And it's like, you would think that AEW would watch the way they're formatting and telling these episodic, you know, soap opera style storytelling, that they would copy it. But because it's working on the other channel, the numbers are going up a little bit, you know, they trended up and everything. And I think, I want to ask you this too. Do you think that when Vince retired, and all of a sudden, like, you know, WWE got a 20% boost, like 15 to 20% boost in the numbers, like right off the bat, right? That there literally was that many people, like lapsed fans that would probably watch if the product was good. Maybe they listen to a lot of our fans listen to the podcast. They don't watch the shows. I imagine a lot of your audience is like that too, you know? And like, if you tell them, like we've had people write into our show and say, you know, when you say the show's good, I'll watch it, you know, and everything like we talk about. That the fact that like maybe people were so upset with the WWE product for so many years, they knew it was Vince's product and Vince is running it, that when he was gone, it's like, wow, he's gone. Like, hey, I'm going to give it a shot now. Do you think why do you think the numbers when trended up when Vince left?
I mean, I think there was a lot of interest. Look, when Vince, you know, ran into the challenge that he has currently, there's a lot of controversy. It was on Fox News. It was in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, the world kind of knew about it. So I think there were a lot of wrestling fans that said, I'm going to tune in to see what happens now.
Right.
And they tuned in to see what happens now, and they were impressed. So they stuck around.
Right.
It's really that simple.
It is, right? Yeah. Well, what storylines you like? Have you been interested on the WWE? What's some of the stuff you like on that show?
I really don't watch it regularly enough.
You see clips and stuff, right?
Look, I'm a big fan of Kevin Owens. I just am. I got to know him a little bit when I worked there for a cup of coffee a couple of years ago, and I really, really like him. Not just I like him as a person, but I really like him as a talent. Mm-hmm. He's very relatable, and he's smart. and he can cut a hell of a promo, and he's got range.
He's getting in good shape too. He's getting better shape. Have you noticed?
I mean, he's a special cat.
I'm glad he got in shape because for a while there, he was looking like the designated driver for the bowling team. But I will say this: the guy cuts incredible promos, takes salacious bumps, is massively entertaining. Him and Sami Zayn, I'm really big fans of. But let me ask you this question, Eric. Let's say you were, obviously theoretically speaking, you were to take over AEW. What 3 changes would you implement immediately? Knowing what you know now.
Knowing what I know now, I'd have a sit down with Chris Jericho, William Regal, Jake, maybe Arn, depending on if he was interested in that role or not. I'd get that team around me, and I'd get them bought in, and then I would look for either somebody on the staff or somebody from outside of the staff that was really good at formatting episodic television, that could sit down with, let's say, Konnan and Disco, or we're going to do an angle with Konnan and Disco. I would ask Konnan and Disco to sit down and share whatever idea you guys have, however you see your story playing out. Sit down with somebody that really understands not only a weekly format, but that could help lay that story out. Not what your story is, but how to take your story and break it down into pieces that would assemble a story, or would resemble an arc that would build every week and would lead to a crescendo. That's what I would do. That's what I didn't do in WCW. I kind of learned it the hard way, and I tried to do it, and sometimes I was decent at it, and sometimes I sucked at it. But, now looking back and knowing now what I didn't know then, that's where I put my resources, is really being disciplined in the way that I approach my story and my characters. And I would probably have to sit down with a number of talent and say, look, I'm not going to lie. There's not going to be anything here for you beyond YouTube and a couple other of those streaming opportunities, but we have to focus on our core talent. And that, you probably look at it over the, you need a good 40, 50 people on your roster, over the course of a year. You need a lot of support. It's not just those 10 or 12 people. Those may be your key talent, your key stars, but you need a lot of supporting cast members as well that are equal. They're not equally as important, but they're very important.
It's a supporting cast.
But you can't have 160 people on your roster with 2 TV shows.
Right.
And keep them happy, no matter how much money you pay them, because these guys, Konnan, you know this better than I do. Guys, they get that big contract. It's like, oh, well, man, I don't care what happens. I got the money. Guess what? You get used to that fucking money pretty quick. Yeah. And if you're really a performer at heart, the money quits mattering after a while. You get used to it. And now you want to be out there on top, or you want to be out there and be able to show your shit. You want to perform. That's why you ended up in the ring in the first place, for God's sake. You didn't go there because you wanted to make a lot of money. You broke into professional wrestling because you love professional wrestling and you saw it as an opportunity, and you want to be the best at it. Most people, not everybody, but most people.
You won't remember this. I had a conversation with you one time. I think we're in Baltimore, Maryland, and I had it was a night when, like, I just, they weren't doing much with me, but I'd been a heel on TV, and they wanted me to go out, and all of a sudden I was a babyface, right? And I was like, they might Graham and give me the angles. I'm like, why am I a babyface tonight? Whatever, right? So I went out and did it, and it's like I came back through the curtain. I just wasn't, was kind of frustrated. I'm taking my tape off and everything. You were walking by. I was like, what's wrong? And I told you, like, you won't remember this conversation because it was short. I was like, bro, it's just very frustrating. I've been a heel here for a while and stuff for thinking, like, I show up, all I get is like, I don't have an angle. It's just 12 minutes on TV. You see your name on the thing. You see the number behind it. It's just frustrating, right? And you go, okay, well, I'll see what it was a very, very short, brief conversation. But to your point, that is one of the most frustrating things with talent, is when you're not involved in something. Like when you're just showing up, you're a wrestler and you have a match. And it's just, you have 13 minutes. It's a match. We don't know what we're doing with you next week. We didn't really do anything with your board, but it's that's the one thing I think Tony Khan didn't realize he was signing up for. Is like, dude, you got to keep people that you pay happy, and when they're not involved, they're not happy,
And happy isn't just the size of the check.
Right. Exactly. It's being involved in something, a story, an angle, or just, 3 to 4 weeks of TV with a guy, you know, so that you want to, like, when you don't have that, it's like, bro, I can tell that problem is create. You can tell, you get that vibe. You can tell that there's that vibe there now because you see a lot of talented guys that are not being used, and you're wondering, like, I can only imagine how these guys feel, you know, like Miro and stuff. Like these guys that are very like they're not being used. Go ahead.
He was telling you this story about Baltimore, whatever, that he said you wouldn't remember. See if you remember this story. I think we were in Club La Villa or we were in that Padre Island. But I remember that we were in trailers, and you know those trailers, remember the windows are like really high.
Mm-hmm.
And there used to be a show that Madden and Ryder and fucking Jeremy Borash used to host, WCW Live. Remember that?
Yeah, I think that was more towards the end, but yeah, I remember it.
Right. It's a pre-show. They go live at the pre-show. Right.
Right. So we were being, we got on there and we were bearing the company, and we didn't know that you were underneath the window listening, and you had a meeting with all three of us. And bro,
who was it? You, Hall and Nash?
Yeah, me, Hall and Nash. I'm sorry, I forgot to name the thing. It was me, Hall and Nash. We're on there just bearing everything and not giving a fuck. But unbeknownst to us, you were under the window and you had a meeting with us, and you tore into us first individually, then collectively. And then I just want to know if you remember this, because I thought it was a hilarious line. You said, you, Hall, Nash, and Konnan, you guys are the gold, silver, and medalist of stirring shit and being a fucking pain in the ass. He goes, and I have a good mind to fucking send you to Saskatchewan where it's 40 degrees below zero and send you to a fucking autograph signing. And Scott goes, cool, we're over in Saskatchewan. I was thinking, how great was that?
You remember that?
No, I don't remember that, but I can see it happening. I can see it. Because that kind of thing happened on a fairly big
Oh my God.
That guy had a great
Here's a funny thing though. Whenever I'd get into it, especially with Kevin Nash, man. Kevin and I would get into it.
Right.
And I miss that because we'd get into it and there were a couple of times I thought, well, he's just going to fucking kill me. That's all. It's just, this is going to escalate and I'm going to get killed and that'll be the end of that. But once it was over, we'd sit down and have a beer and a burger and hang out.
But you know what? I think
it was over. You know?
I think also one thing you've probably also realized, Eric, that acrimony sometimes serves as an instigator for both parties to do better. Because you know that if you don't have something for Nash, shit's on. And Nash better fucking, go out there. And because I always thought, like, for example, like I'm going to take you and my dynamic. I can imagine you think, who the fuck does this guy think he is? He just comes in here and fucking speaks his mind. Fuck this guy. I'm going to show. And I'm like, well, fuck Eric. I was a big star in Mexico. And so we're both trying to fucking get over on each other. But I knew that if I didn't go in the ring and produce, because I remember one time specifically, we were in Houston and me and Ray were tagging up and we wore these fucking orange prison garb. And I was like, and you were on commentary. And I was like, let's blow this motherfucker out. It's full of Mexicans. DJ Ran is on the fucking thing, bringing us out the music. And let's show them all the cool shit we can do. And bro, we went out there and we blew the roof off that motherfucker. And you actually came up to us in the dressing room. You were like, wow, that was really good. And we were like, yeah, motherfucker, why aren't you doing more with us? But at the end of the day, I think that dynamic, that acrimony kind of serves a little bit of a purpose because it makes everybody be more on guard and be more on their game instead of being at that comfort level. Would you disagree with that?
I think in some cases, yeah. In some cases, it can work the other way,
Right.
And again, I'll use Kevin as an example. I had a lot of respect for Kevin. I can disagree and argue, and if it comes down to it, fist fight with someone that I have respect with, and then once it's over, let's go get a beer.
Right.
We worked it out. I would prefer not to have to get angry or yell or get, challenged. I'd like to be able to work shit out without going through that process. But sometimes that's not possible when you get really passionate people and everybody's in it and they're fighting to win. And, you don't become a star in anything, in any sport, any form of entertainment or any walk of life without conflict. It's what do you do with that conflict and how do you make it work for you? And at least, like I said, with Kevin, our formula was simple. We were both brutally honest. Neither one of us would back down if we believed in what we were saying. We'd work it out. And then once we decided, okay, this is where it ends, that's where it ended. And we'd move on and we'd make money together and we'd do business together and we could still be friends. But
you also got to remember, we were all young, cocky, testosterone fueled.
Well, you were. I wasn't. That was all you.
Yeah.
Bro, that's why it's a beautiful thing that we're even talking like this now. You know what I'm saying? And I'm so glad that we are, because I've told you this before and you actually popped the last time I told you this. One of life's tragedies is we get old too soon and wise too late. You know,
Yep.
If we would have known back then what we know now, would have been chilly waters. But it is what it is. It was what it was. We did what we did. And I'm just glad to call you a friend now, you know.
Same here, brother. I'm grateful for it all. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
Listen. Recently, you had you and Conrad were talking about me on the show recently too, and you had kind words to say about me.
Did we bury
You
him?
should bury him.
No.
Never put him on.
No.
And
I do want to make a point though. You didn't remember how I came back after you'd fired me. Sting went to bat.
Because it wasn't important to him.
No. I just want to reread it.
You've told me that many times, Eric.
When you're the owner of the company, there's no way you can remember. There's 100 and something talent.
I don't remember what I did Thursday.
Right. But I just want to tell you that Sting went to bat for me, to you, and that's how that gestated. So I got endorsed by Sting. So you brought me.
One last question, Eric. What happened? Because you were like an executive producer, associate producer, and I actually liked this show. That thing that you did with Scott Baio.
Oh, yeah.
And you were doing like some other reality shit. What happened there?
Just the reality television business over the last, really, it started in about 2013 or 14. It got to be more and more difficult because
oversaturated, maybe?
Well, saturated, yes, but more importantly, there was so much reality television out there that networks were beginning to scale it down. They were, I used to, one of the first shows I sold, Jason and I sold it on a fucking bar rag, literally a paper bar napkin, to a guy by the name of Dean Valentine, who used to run UPN back when SmackDown first started there. I sold him a show, Jason and I sold him a show on the back of a bar napkin for $750,000 an episode for 10 episodes over lunch.
Wow. What show was that?
And the show never even happened, by the way, but we still got, because Dean Valentine got fired, but we still got paid on that show, even though we never produced it. But today, for example, if I'm going to pitch a show it's one of the reasons I got out of television, and Jason and I both got out, is because if we want to pitch a show today, I've got to invest probably no less than $15,000 to create a presentation to take to a meeting.
Wow.
And it used to just be lunch, right?
And then when if you do, and at the time we would sell, if we had 10 shows in a pipeline, we'd sell 2, right? That was where we were at back then. Maybe we'd sell 3 out of 10. But those, at the time, those 2 or 3 shows, we were making enough money off of them where you only needed like 2 of those shows a year. And, I was making far more money producing television than I ever made in professional wrestling. Trust me when I tell you.
Right.
But it got to the point where now all of a sudden we have to spend $10,000 or $15,000 creating a pitch reel, right? A sizzle reel, a casting tape, and all that other shit. And there's only about a 10 or 12% chance we're going to sell that show. And now I got to keep 10 of them in the pipeline. And the profit margins on reality television now, we used to go from making 25 or 30% of the budget by the time we were done to making maybe 5 or 7% of the budget. Not worth it anymore.
So let me ask you a question. When you have a show that was successful, like what shows were successful? The Scott Baio one, right?
That was successful. We did 2 or 3 seasons of that.
Okay. So the fact that you had a previous hit before, that has no bearing on you getting projects greenlit, or they're like, well, what have you done for me lately?
No, every show you get on the air, especially if it's successful, increases your 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 ratio, right?
Right.
We were at about 2 or maybe 3 out of 10. If you're a producer like Tom Beers was, for example, Tom Beers had, he was the guy that created Monster Garage and all the crab fishing shows, and he's probably produce more television than just about anybody, including Mark Burnett. All Tom has to do is pick up the phone and say, this is what I want to do. And here's what I'm thinking. And here's the budget. And he'll probably sell a show, or he would have back then. But for Jason and I, we were a small production company. We were successful, but we weren't hugely successful.
Where's Jason now? What's he doing?
I'm not sure. I talked to Jason about 6 months ago or so. I think he's living in Arizona, but I'm not sure what he's doing for a gig.
Right.
We're still friends. I just don't.
Right.
I talk to you guys more than I talk to even my brother and sister. So,
Eric, it's always a pleasure having you on. Please tell me what you got going on. I know you've got a show with Conrad, and anything else that you want to plug, please plug it to our audience.
I'm not here. I appreciate that. I know
you're not here for that, but still plug it.
I mean, 83 weeks is something I'm passionate about. I've got a book coming out in November, 11/11.
Okay, but where can they find 83 weeks, Eric?
Bischoffbook.com. It should be different. It's going to be a different book than I think a lot of people expect. It's called Grateful. One of the cool things about the book, I will plug in, because this has never happened before. We may make publishing history. This book may end up being a collectible, not like the Guggenheim Bible collectible, but pretty fucking collectible.
Right.
Because it'll be the first book ever that I'm aware of where at the end of every chapter, there's going to be a QR code. And if you've got the physical book, you'll be able to take your phone, take a picture of that QR code, and it will take you to an exclusive interview that you'll only be able to find if you have the book.
That's pretty cool.
That will come from whoever the subject of that particular chapter is.
That's pretty cool.
Never been done before. So
who thought of that? That's a brilliant idea. Who thought of that?
Yeah, it is. I wish I could say it was my idea, but it was a friend of mine's idea. But
go ahead, take it. You don't have to give him credit. Nobody's going to know. Nobody knows your friend.
I woke up. I woke up with this vision in my head.
That really is a great idea.
Now, I know I don't got time to listen to anything, Eric. I know that you're always entertaining. That's why we bring you back, and we got nothing but love and respect for you. But Glenn's a big fan of your show. Where can people hear you on the podcasting network?
Anywhere you get your podcasts, just punch in 83 weeks and you'll find me.
All right. Anything else that we need to know about? Any other projects you're doing that you want people to know about or support?
No, man, that's it. That's it.
You look great. Great tan, by the way. I'd still hit it. Joe, what's up? I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought my mic was off. I wanted to bring this up because I know Eric will appreciate it. We talked about Mongo McMichael, Steve McMichael earlier. If anybody wants to donate to the cause, help Mongo out with his health and his issues and everything, it's donately.com, DONATELY.com, and it's under Money for Mongo. So you can make a donation.
And let me just say this. There's a lot of wrestlers that do a tremendous job of building a facade that they're really nice guys and all this other bullshit. Not going to drag anybody out, but Mongo is a man's man, a real nice guy, a fucking cool dude. I had a lot of great times with him. I think he might have been married to Juventud over the weekend on a stopover in Laredo, Texas, but that's besides the point. Just a beautiful human being, bro. I love you, Mongo, and I hope, everything gets fixed,
Thank you, guys. Appreciate that.
And Eric, thank you once again, and we'll have you in the future.
I hope so.
You are the nomination for you is friend of the show.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
We'll see
Thank
you
again.
guys. Thank you for being on Keeping It 100.
Thank you, man.
Yo, what up? This is Konnan, and I host Keeping It 100. My co-host, Disco Inferno, unfortunately.
Well, I'd say you're my co-host.
Listen, every Thursday here on Spreaker, we talk pro wrestling, sports, movies, music, TV, pop culture, and some politics. It's everything the rest of the pro wrestling podcasts are not.
Tune in to hear myself, the superior one, educate and inform.
Tune in to hear me bury Disco.
That's very disrespectful.
Join us every Thursday on Spreaker and keep it 100. Boom!